My manager terminated my employment, falsely reporting to HR I pilfered company goods to blacklist me forever. 1 month passed, he messaged. Here's the thing about getting fired. Most people, they think the worst part is just losing the job. That's wrong. So incredibly wrong. The real nightmare starts when your boss lies to HR, tells them you're a thief, and then meticulously engineers it so you'll never, ever work in your field again. They don't just fire you, they blacklist you across an entire industry, making sure recruiters go silent the moment they call your former employer for a reference. That's the part that makes you want to burn everything to the ground. My name is Ethan Reed, I'm 38, and this whole hellish saga unfolded just 8 months ago. Even now, I'm still processing how spectacularly my former boss managed to destroy his own career while trying to annihilate mine. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand that karma isn't just some abstract concept, it's a meticulously detailed financial audit trail. I dedicated 11 years of my life to Riverside manufacturing. 11 years. That's longer than most marriages last these days. I started as a junior accountant, fresh out of school, wide-eyed and eager. By year 7, I'd worked my way up to financial operations manager, overseeing budgets totaling $47 million annually across 3 divisions. My team of 6 were absolute rock stars, people who genuinely knew their stuff. Riverside built serious industrial equipment, hydraulic systems, valve assemblies, precision components for aerospace and medical devices. This was the kind of intricate, high-stakes manufacturing that went into commercial aircraft and surgical robots. Serious business with serious margins. My boss was Mark Thompson, the chief financial officer. He was 52, had an MBA from Stanford that he somehow managed to weave into approximately 60% of all conversations, and drove a pearl-white Lexus ES350 that he'd park diagonally across 2 spots every single morning. Not because the spots were small, but because he genuinely believed his car deserved extra protection. You know the type, right? Smart enough to be dangerous, yet so deeply insecure that he felt threatened by anyone remotely competent. He was just political enough to climb the ladder without actually being particularly good at his job. Mark had been CFO for 4 years when this story truly began. He'd been brought in from a VP role at another company after our previous CFO retired. The board wanted someone with a fancy resume. For the first 6 months, he was fine. He kept his distance, let me run my department. He'd occasionally forward my reports to the CEO, David Miller, after making a few minor edits, just enough so it looked like he was involved. Classic middle management move. I didn't care much then. The work got done, the numbers were clean, and I had enough autonomy to actually do my job properly. But for about 2 years before everything exploded, we'd had friction. Nothing major at first, just small things. He'd tweak my budget proposals without consulting me, then present them in executive meetings as if the revisions were his brilliant ideas. He'd take credit for cost-saving measures my team implemented, like when we renegotiated our audit software contract and saved $43,000 annually, which then showed up in his quarterly report as CFO initiatives. His assistant would literally edit the PDF header on my financial analysis reports, so it read, "Prepared by Mark Thompson," instead of my name. It was standard office politics, I told myself, the kind of petty territorial marking that happens in every corporate environment. I just kept my head down and focused on the work. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the company was successful and my team was respected. Looking back now, I was so incredibly naive. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Mark was showing me he was the kind of guy who would steal credit without hesitation. I just didn't realize how far he'd take that tendency. The real problem started in January of last year. Our CEO, David Miller, who was also the founder and majority owner, announced we'd be implementing a new ERP system. Enterprise Resource Planning, for those who don't speak fluent corporate. Basically, it's a massive software overhaul that touches everything: finances, inventory, production scheduling, vendor management, customer orders, shipping, quality control. Every single system the company uses, all integrated into one monstrous platform. It's supposed to make things more efficient, give better data visibility, reduce errors. In reality, ERP implementations are often where companies go to die. I've seen it happen. A mid-sized business decides they need to modernize, hires expensive consultants, picks even more expensive software, and 18 months later, they're hemorrhaging cash and the new system still doesn't even work. Half the time, the company ends up reverting to their old systems and writing off millions. Mark was supposed to lead our implementation. On paper, it made sense. The CFO should oversee the financial systems transition. He talked a big game in the kickoff meeting, brought in slides about digital transformation and operational excellence, using words like synergy and optimization without actually explaining what any of it meant. He was drowning within 3 weeks. The man had absolutely no idea what he was doing. I sat in those project meetings, watching him fumble through basic questions about data migration and system requirements. He'd picked a software vendor, Integraft Solutions, primarily because they'd taken him to some industry conference in Las Vegas back in November. I know this because he mentioned it constantly. The Integraft team really impressed me in Vegas. Translation: they bought him steak dinners and promised him his implementation would be easy. He didn't properly scope the requirements. He didn't involve department heads in the selection process. He didn't account for our custom inventory tracking needs or the specialized reporting our aerospace clients required. He just signed a contract because the sales rep was friendly and showed him some polished demo videos. The vendor initially quoted $380,000 for the full project. Mark told David Miller and the board it would cost $220,000 and be done in 4 months. Where he got those numbers? No idea. Maybe he thought he could negotiate them down mid-project. Maybe he genuinely believed he could cut corners and still deliver. Either way, he was catastrophically wrong. By March, just 8 weeks into the implementation, we were already $190,000 over budget with maybe 40% actual completion, and that's being generous. The old system was already partially decommissioned because the implementation plan called for a gradual cutover. So we were stuck in this nightmare middle state where half our data lived in the legacy system and half lived in Integraft, and nothing talked to each other properly. Production was reporting inventory discrepancies. We'd show 230 hydraulic valve assemblies in the new system, but physically, we only had 186 in the warehouse. That's a $14,000 variance, just sitting there unresolved. Multiply that across 400 plus SKUs, and you can imagine the chaos. Accounting couldn't close the books properly. Month-end close, which normally took us 4 days, was stretching to 2 weeks because we had to reconcile data across 2 systems manually. My team was working until 8 p.m. every night just trying to balance accounts that should have been automated. Customer orders were getting delayed because the sales team couldn't access accurate inventory data. We'd promise a shipment date based on what the system showed, then discover we didn't actually have the components available. We lost a $230,000 order to a medical device manufacturer because we couldn't fulfill their timeline. They went to a competitor. Everything was on fire. And Mark just kept scheduling meetings where he'd ask the Integraft team for status updates, nod along to their technical explanations he clearly didn't understand, and then tell us everything was on track. On track to what? Complete disaster. I spent 6 weeks working 16-hour days, fixing Mark's mistakes. Not because I'm a martyr, but because I had 6 people on my team who were burning out, and letting the implementation fail would have meant layoffs. So, I fixed it. My team pulled together all the documentation the vendor needed: requirement specifications, data mapping sheets, process flow diagrams, stuff that should have been done during planning, but Mark had skipped. I rewrote the implementation timeline, creating realistic milestones, proper dependencies, the kind of project plan you'd learn in any basic management course. I created workarounds so we could keep operating while transitioning systems, built custom data bridges using our in-house IT team, and set up nightly reconciliation processes to catch discrepancies. Daniel, my senior financial analyst, worked weekends helping me build test scenarios. Sarah stayed late every night validating data migrations. By mid-April, the system was finally functioning. Inventory accuracy hit 98.4%. Month-end close dropped back down to 5 days. We'd stabilized the disaster. And Mark took credit for all of it. In the May executive meeting, He handed out copies of my work with his name on top. My implementation timeline, my process redesign, my workaround strategies, all printed with "Prepared by Mark Thompson, Chief Financial Officer" in bold. I only found out because Sarah sent me a photo. Text message at 2:47 p.m. Thought you should see this. The board gave him a $40,000 performance bonus for successfully leading the ERP recovery. I should have quit right then. Should have walked into David's office and explained everything. But I didn't. I told myself Mark's lies would eventually catch up with him. Wrong. That was a Friday. Monday morning, Mark called me into his office at 8:45 a.m. Close the door, he said when I walked in. He was standing by his window, hands in his pockets, doing that fake casual pose executives do when they're about to ruin your day. He probably practiced it in the mirror. The posture was too deliberate, too staged. "We need to talk about some discrepancies I found in your department's expense reports." My stomach dropped. Not fear, exactly. More like that gut feeling when you know someone's about to lie to your face, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. What discrepancies? He turned around. His face was blank. Neutral. Rehearsed. This wasn't a conversation about actual problems. This was a performance. He'd already decided how this would go before I even walked in. "Over the past 8 months, there have been irregularities in vendor payments processed through your authorization code. Duplicate invoices. Payments to companies that don't appear to have legitimate business relationships with us. Suspicious timing patterns. I've documented approximately $43,000 in questionable transactions." I just stared at him, my brain trying to process what I was hearing. 8 months. $43,000. My authorization code. None of it made any sense. "Mark, that's not. I've already reported this to HR and the CEO. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. I need your badge, your laptop, and your company phone. Security will escort you out." The room tilted. Not like fainting, but like reality shifting sideways, like the floor underneath me had turned into a carnival funhouse where nothing was quite level anymore. "You're accusing me of theft." "I'm reporting financial irregularities that occurred under your supervision. HR will handle the investigation. This is protocol." My hands started shaking. 11 years. I'd given this company 11 years. Missed my daughter Sophia's dance recital because of month-end closings. Skipped family dinners because production schedules got delayed and we needed emergency budget revisions. I'd put in weekends and holidays, turned down job offers that would have paid more, because I believed in what we were building here. And this guy, this fraud who couldn't implement a basic software project without burning $250,000 and needed me to save his reputation, was calling me a thief. "I want to see the documentation. I want to know exactly what transactions you're talking about." That's not how this works. HR will provide relevant information during their investigation. "Mark, I process hundreds of vendor payments every month. If there are discrepancies, they're data entry errors or system glitches from the ERP migration. They're not badge, laptop, phone." Now, his tone shifted. Cold. Final. He wasn't discussing this, wasn't negotiating. He'd made his decision. Maybe days ago. Maybe weeks. This whole meeting was just him executing a plan he'd already set in motion. I handed over my badge, my laptop, my company phone. He put everything in a clear plastic bin, the kind you'd use for confiscated contraband, like I was being processed at a police station. "Someone from HR will contact you within 48 hours. You should probably get a lawyer." That last part. That was the knife twist. Not necessary for the procedure. Not part of any standard HR protocol. He said it specifically to make sure I understood. He wasn't just firing me. He was making sure I knew he was destroying me. Security's waiting outside. I looked at the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 shapes. Security had been standing right there the entire time. Mark had arranged this like a military operation. Planned every detail. Timed it for maximum efficiency. I walked to the door without another word. Opened it. Gary and Frankie from building security were standing there, looking deeply uncomfortable. I'd known these guys for years. Gary had worked security for 8 years. We'd talked about his daughter's college applications, his wife's battle with breast cancer. Frankie was newer, only 2 years, but we'd chatted plenty. football, weather, normal workplace small talk. Now, they were here to escort me out like I'd stolen company equipment. Mr. Reed, Gary said quietly. Professional. Awkward. We need to walk you to your office so you can collect personal belongings. Then we'll escort you from the building. I knew the drill. My office was 2 floors down. Same building, different world. I'd been in that space for 7 years. Same desk, same filing cabinets, same coffee mug collection lining the windowsill. Photos of Sophia and the kids. That brass nameplate someone from my team had given me as a joke. Ethan Reed, the guy who actually does math correctly. Gary handed me a cardboard box. I loaded it with a coffee mug, the photos, and that brass nameplate. 7 years in one box. Through the glass walls, 47 employees on that floor suddenly found their screens fascinating. Nobody made eye contact, except Jason, Brenda, and Daniel. The hallway went silent when we walked through. That's what fear does. The elevator ride felt endless. The lobby went quiet. Paul from security said, "Take care, Mr. Reed." Outside, it was drizzling. I stood there, holding my box. 11 years gone in 23 minutes. My phone rang. "Ethan, are you getting in or planning to stand there looking tragic?" It was my best friend, Chris. His pickup was at the curb. He'd brought bungee cords. He secured my box like it was furniture headed to Goodwill. We drove in silence for 5 minutes. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Haven't decided yet," I lied. Chris smirked. He'd known me since we were 15. He could tell when I was planning something. He drove me home, helped carry the box to the garage. "You need anything? Call me. Bail money, getaway driver, tire slashing, I'm your guy." After he left, I went inside. I set the box on the kitchen table and just stared at it for probably 20 minutes. Then I opened the severance envelope Mark had included with my badge and laptop when security collected them. 6 months salary, $84,000 gross. Benefits continuation through December. Standard non-disparagement clause that basically said I couldn't badmouth the company publicly. A non-compete agreement that prevented me from working for direct competitors for 18 months. The NDA was tight. I couldn't discuss internal operations, client relationships, vendor contracts, or financial processes for 24 months. Everything was designed to silence me, make me go away quietly, accept my termination, take the money, disappear from the industry for a year and a half, and never tell anyone what really happened. But there was one exception. Buried in the fine print on page 4. One single sentence in subsection 3D that Mark's lawyers had either missed or underestimated. Departing executives retain shareholder communication rights per state corporate law, including participation in shareholder meetings and access to corporate records as provided by Oregon Revised Statutes 60.781. I read that sentence 15 times. Then I looked up ORS 60.781 on my laptop. Shareholders, even former employee shareholders, maintain certain rights to inspect corporate records, attend shareholder meetings, and receive financial disclosures. The law was designed to protect minority shareholders from being shut out by majority holders. And I'd bought into the employee stock purchase program 7 years ago. I owned 400 shares of Riverside Manufacturing. Not enough to influence anything. Barely 0.3% of outstanding shares. But legally, I was a shareholder. And shareholders have rights that regular employees don't. Their lawyers had rushed the paperwork, probably drafted my severance in 3 hours to match Mark's aggressive timeline. That one sentence was going to cost them everything. I signed the severance agreement. They wanted me quiet? Sure. I'd be quiet for exactly 72 more hours. I called Michael, our realtor who'd handled our real estate closing 2 years ago. He referred me to Benjamin Wright, an employment attorney who'd spent 15 years handling wrongful termination cases. Benjamin's office was downtown, 12th floor, windows overlooking the river. He was maybe 50, gray hair, looked like he'd seen every corporate betrayal humans could devise. I laid out everything. The ERP disaster, Mark taking credit for my work, the sudden accusation, the immediate termination. Benjamin took notes on a legal pad. Old school. Didn't even touch his computer. Did you sign anything when you left? No, Mark just took my stuff and had security walk me out. Good. That's very good, he said, looking up. Did he give you any documentation about these supposed discrepancies? Nothing. Just verbal accusations. Also good. How much access did you have to company financial systems? Complete access. I was financial operations manager. I authorized vendor payments, reviewed expense reports, managed budget allocations. So, theoretically, you could have diverted funds if you wanted to. Theoretically, yes. But I didn't. I believe you. But here's what Thompson's going to argue. You had means, you had opportunity, and he's going to fabricate motive. He's going to tell HR you were upset about being passed over for his position, or something similar. He'll create a narrative that makes sense on paper. My chest felt tight. So, what do I do? Benjamin leaned back in his chair. We do 3 things. First, I file a cease and desist demanding they stop making defamatory statements about you. Second, I request all documentation related to these alleged discrepancies through discovery. Third, and this is the important one, we conduct our own audit. An audit? You had complete access to financial systems. So did Thompson. If there are fraudulent transactions, we need to determine who actually initiated them. My gut says Thompson's projecting, accusing you of exactly what he's been doing himself. That thought hadn't even occurred to me, but it made chilling sense. Mark had been acting paranoid for months, defensive during budget reviews, vague about certain vendor relationships. How long would an audit take with the right forensic accountant? 3 to 4 weeks if we move fast. I know someone who specializes in this. Former FBI, worked corporate fraud cases for 20 years. He's expensive, but he's thorough. How expensive? $20,000, maybe $25,000 for a full analysis. I didn't have that kind of money just sitting around, but I also didn't have a choice. This wasn't about the job anymore. This was about my reputation, my career, my ability to ever work in finance again. Do it. Benjamin made a call, got me a meeting with the forensic accountant for that afternoon. Arthur Hayes, no relation to my realtor, operated out of a small office that looked more like a therapist's waiting room than an investigation headquarters. But the credentials on his wall told the real story. FBI commendations, certifications in fraud examination, letters of appreciation from 3 different U.S. attorneys. Benjamin explained the situation. Arthur said, this pattern is more common than you'd think. Executive gets caught in financial mismanagement, panics, throws a subordinate under the bus to buy time. How would we prove Thompson's behind this? We trace every transaction he's accusing you of and determine the actual authorization chain. Modern financial systems log everything: who initiated payments, who approved them, timestamps, IP addresses, device identifiers. It's extremely difficult to fake the data convincingly. What do you need from me? Everything. Old emails, text messages, any documentation you kept, system access logs if you have them, names of people on your team who might be willing to talk. I'll also need Benjamin to subpoena the company's financial records, which they'll fight, but will win eventually. I spent 4 hours in Arthur's office downloading every work email I'd ever sent from my personal computer. Turns out, I was paranoid about losing data, so I'd been backing up my work files to a personal cloud drive every month. 11 years of financial records, vendor contracts, budget proposals, correspondence. Arthur's eyes lit up when I showed him. This is gold. Most people don't keep this kind of documentation. I'm thorough. No, you're smart. This is going to save us months. I left Arthur's office feeling something I hadn't felt since Monday morning. Not hope, exactly. More like controlled anger. The kind that makes you focused instead of desperate. Christine from HR called 2 days later. Still no relation to anyone. She sounded nervous. Mr. Reed, we need to schedule a meeting to discuss the allegations against you. We can do this at our office or via video conference. I'm represented by counsel. All communication needs to go through my attorney, Benjamin Wright. Silence. Then I see. Can you provide his contact information? I gave her Benjamin's number and hung up. Felt good. Really good. Benjamin called me an hour later. HR reached out. They want to meet next week. I told them we'd agree to a meeting only if they provide full documentation of the alleged discrepancies in advance. Will they do that? They have to. If they're claiming you committed fraud, they need to prove it. If they can't provide documentation, their case collapses. The documentation arrived 5 days later. Benjamin forwarded it to me with a note. This is weaker than I expected. Might be good news. I opened the file. 17 pages. Printouts of vendor payments with my authorization signature. A cover memo from Mark outlining suspicious patterns. I read through it twice. Then I called Benjamin. This is edited. What do you mean? These payment records. The dates are right. The amounts are right. But they've removed contextual information, invoice numbers, purchase order references, approval chains. It looks like I just authorized random payments. But if you saw the full records, you'd see these were all legitimate, properly documented transactions. Can you prove that with your backup files? Absolutely. Every one of these payments has a corresponding invoice, purchase order, and budget approval. I can show the complete paper trail. Benjamin was quiet for a moment. Send me everything. I'm going to have Arthur analyze this alongside what the company provided. If Thompson's manipulating records, we're going to bury him. I spent the weekend matching every transaction in Mark's accusation to my archived records. All 17 flagged payments had complete documentation, legitimate vendors, proper invoices, appropriate budget allocations, nothing irregular. One payment jumped out, though, $8,400 to Summit Consulting Services, dated February 12th. I remembered this one specifically because I'd questioned it. Mark had sent me an invoice and told me to process it immediately. Said it was for ERP implementation consulting. I'd asked for a purchase order. He said he'd email it, never did, but he followed up 3 times, insisting the payment needed to go through that day for contractual reasons. I'd processed it because he was my boss and I assumed he'd handled the paperwork. Dumb, in retrospect. I pulled up the invoice from my files. Looked generic. Basic Word document formatting. No company logo. The address listed was a UPS store. I showed Sophia. This looks fake. Can Arthur trace where the money went? Maybe if we can subpoena the company's banking records. I sent everything to Arthur. He called me back at 8 p.m. on Sunday. You need to see this. Can you come to my office? I drove over. Arthur had papers spread across his entire desk. Financial records, transaction logs, spreadsheets with highlighted rows. Thompson's been running a vendor fraud scheme for at least 3 years, Arthur said. I found 14 payments to shell companies, fake businesses with UPS store addresses, no websites, no business licenses. Total of $127,000, all processed through accounts he controlled. How did you find this? Your backup files. You documented everything, including invoices and purchase orders. I cross-referenced those against the company's official vendor list. These 14 companies don't appear anywhere in procurement records, contract files, or tax documents. They don't exist. But Mark had me process one of those payments. Right. That's probably when he realized you might notice the pattern. So he fired you and blamed the whole thing on you. Classic misdirection. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was rage, not fear. Can we prove Thompson created these vendors? I'm working on it. I've traced some of the payments to bank accounts. If we can get Benjamin to subpoena Thompson's financial records, we'll probably find deposits corresponding to these payments. But even without that, what we have now is enough to demonstrate the accusations against you are fraudulent. We met with Benjamin the next morning. He reviewed Arthur's findings for an hour, making notes, asking questions. Finally, he looked up. This is a prosecutor's dream. Thompson's going to prison. Prison? Wire fraud? Embezzlement, falsifying business records, making false statements to federal investigators. If this touches any federal contracts, which it probably does, since you make aerospace components, we're talking federal charges. What about my case? Your wrongful termination case just became leverage. We go to the company and present this evidence. We tell them they can either reinstate you with full back pay, clear your name completely, and cooperate with our criminal referral against Thompson, or we file a lawsuit that exposes their entire executive team as either complicit or criminally negligent. They'll fight initially, yes, but once they see what we have, they'll fold. No company wants this in court. The discovery process alone would destroy them. Every vendor payment for the last 5 years would become public record. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll draft a demand letter with Arthur's findings attached. Send it directly to the CEO and the company's general counsel. Copy the board of directors for good measure. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction yet. More like watching the first domino fall. Benjamin sent the letter on a Wednesday. 37 pages. Executive summary of Arthur's findings. Timeline of Mark's fraud scheme. My documentation proving every accusation against me was false. Demand for immediate reinstatement. Full back pay. Public retraction of all accusations and cooperation with criminal investigation. David Miller called Benjamin directly 2 days later. They talked for 45 minutes. When Benjamin hung up, he was smiling. They want to meet Monday. CEO, General Counsel, and the board chair. What about Thompson? Suspended pending investigation. They're bringing in an outside law firm to audit everything. Do I need to be there? Only if you want to watch them apologize. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The meeting was at 9 a.m. Monday. Benjamin's office. David Miller showed up with their general counsel, Victoria Stone, and 2 other attorneys I'd never seen before. They looked exhausted. Probably spent the weekend reviewing everything. David Miller was 61, founded the company in 1997. Built it from 12 employees to 340. I'd always liked him, direct, fair, actually cared about the business. He looked sick. Ethan, he extended his hand. I shook it. I owe you an enormous apology. What Thompson did, what we allowed to happen, there's no excuse. Victoria Stone set a folder on the table. We've reviewed Mr. Hayes' findings. We've also conducted our own preliminary audit. The evidence is conclusive. Mr. Thompson has been embezzling company funds for approximately 3 years. Total estimated theft is between $127,000 and $160,000. He fabricated accusations against you to cover his tracks. We've terminated his employment effective immediately, David added. We're cooperating fully with law enforcement. We've also prepared this agreement. Victoria slid papers across the table. I didn't touch them. What am I looking at? Benjamin picked them up, scanned through. Full reinstatement to your previous position. Back pay for all missed time. 3 years additional salary as damages. That's approximately $290,000. Complete retraction sent to all employees, vendors, and industry contacts. Written letter of recommendation. Agreement not to sue for wrongful termination or defamation. That's their offer. I looked at David. It's what's fair, given the circumstances. Fair. I leaned back. David, your CFO accused me of being a thief. Had me escorted out by security. Told HR I'd stolen from the company. You know what that did? I couldn't apply for jobs. Couldn't use my experience as a reference. Spent 6 weeks thinking my career was over. My daughter asked me why I was home all the time. My wife had to watch me fall apart. David looked down. We failed you, Victoria said quietly. We should have investigated Thompson's claims more thoroughly before taking action. We should have given you due process. We didn't. That's on us. 300 grand doesn't fix my reputation. No, David agreed. But it's a start. And we're prepared to do more. We'll pay for your legal fees. All of them. We'll provide testimony if Thompson's case goes to trial. We'll make public statements clarifying your innocence if you want that. I looked at Benjamin. He shrugged slightly. Your call. I thought about Mark driving his Lexus, taking credit for my work, smirking while I got escorted out. I want my job back. Not my old position. His. Victoria and David exchanged glances. Ethan, the board hasn't. Thompson's position is open. I know this company's finances better than anyone. I've been here 11 years. I just saved you from a fraud scheme. You owe me this. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Agreed. But you'll need board approval. I can't guarantee, then schedule a board meeting. I'll present my case this week. This week, they agreed. Board meeting Thursday. I had 3 days to prepare the presentation of my life. Benjamin drove me home. We didn't talk much. When he pulled into my driveway, he said, You know, most people would take the money and walk away. I'm not most people. No, you're really not. I spent 3 days building a presentation. Not about revenge, about competence. I outlined the ERP implementation disaster and how my team had saved it. I detailed cost savings I'd implemented over 11 years, $3.4 million total. Showed vendor relationships I'd optimized. Presented a financial strategy for the next 3 years that would increase margins by 7%. Thursday came. Boardroom, 6th floor. 8 board members, David, Victoria, me, and Benjamin. I presented for 45 minutes. Didn't mention Mark once. Just showed them what I'd accomplished and what I could do. When I finished, the board chair, a woman named Eleanor Vance, a retired aerospace executive, leaned forward. "Mr. Reed, what Thompson did to you is unconscionable. What we allowed to happen was unacceptable. If we appoint you CFO, what's your first priority? Complete financial audit. Not just Thompson's fraud, but every process, every control, every system. We're never going to let something like this happen again." She smiled. "When can you start?" "Monday." They voted unanimously. I was the new CFO. I didn't celebrate. Went home, told Sophia, then sat on the couch for an hour just processing everything. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Ethan, it's Mark. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Can we meet?" I stared at that message for probably 10 minutes. Then I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Benjamin and Arthur, and blocked the number. My first day as CFO was surreal. Same building, same people, different office. Mark's former office. I'd had maintenance remove everything, his desk, his chair, his pretentious art. Brought in my own furniture. Sarah from finance knocked on my door around 10 a.m. Can I just say, this is the best thing that's happened to this company in years. My old team threw together a lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches in the conference room. But Daniel stood up and said, "Boss, you taught us to document everything. That advice literally saved your career. We're glad you're back." That almost broke me. Almost. Mark's case took 7 months to go to trial. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, embezzlement, and making false statements. Arthur testified about the forensic audit. I testified about the fraudulent vendor payments. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was another 3 months. The judge gave him 6 years federal prison. Ordered $127,000 restitution to Riverside Manufacturing. Banned him from serving as a corporate officer for life. I didn't attend the sentencing. Didn't need to. I'd already won. 6 years federal prison, $127,000 restitution, lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. The judge called it a profound betrayal of fiduciary duty and a calculated attempt to destroy an innocent man's career to cover criminal activity. I was in my office when Benjamin texted me the verdict. Forwarded it to Sophia with one word, "Done." She replied with a champagne bottle emoji. We went out to dinner that night. Nothing fancy. Just the 4 of us at the Italian place near our house. My daughter asked why we were celebrating on a random Tuesday. "Dad won something at work," Sophia said. "Like a trophy, something like that." I've been CFO for 8 months now. I implemented new financial controls that would have caught Mark's scheme in the first month. Every vendor payment over $5,000 now requires dual authorization. We brought in an external audit firm that reviews our books quarterly instead of annually. Created a whistleblower hotline that reports directly to the board, not through executive management. The ERP system actually works now. Month-end takes 3 days instead of 5. Inventory accuracy is at 99.1%. We landed a $4.8 million contract with a medical robotics company in California because our systems could demonstrate real-time inventory tracking and quality control documentation. Sarah got promoted to Director of Financial Operations. Daniel's running the accounting team. My old department is thriving. 3 months after Mark got sentenced, his lawyer reached out to Benjamin. Mark wanted to meet with me. Said he had information about other financial irregularities at Riverside. Claimed he could help us recover additional funds if I'd agree to speak with prosecutors about reducing his sentence. Benjamin called me. "What do you want me to tell them?" "Tell them Ethan Reed doesn't take meetings with convicted felons." That's cold. He earned it. Mark tried again 2 weeks later. Different approach. Sent a handwritten letter to my house. Don't know how he got my address. Probably still had company records from before his arrest. The letter was 6 pages. Apologies. Explanations about financial pressure and bad decisions. Claims that he'd actually been protecting me from board members who wanted to eliminate my position. Said firing me was supposed to be temporary until he could fix things internally. Complete garbage from start to finish. I read it once, then I photographed every page and sent it to Benjamin and Arthur. Does this change anything legally? I asked. No, but it's evidence of continued harassment. Want me to file a restraining order? Not yet. Let's see if he gives up. He didn't. A week later, his wife, ex-wife by then, Denise Thompson, showed up at Riverside. Veronica at reception called me. There's a Denise Thompson here asking to see you. She says it's personal. Send her up. Denise looked rough. I hadn't seen her since a company holiday party 3 years ago. Back then, she'd been polished. Expensive jewelry, that Upper West Side confidence. Now, she looked tired, worn out. She sat across from my desk, Mark's old desk, and didn't waste time. He's been calling me. Wants me to ask you to write a letter to the parole board, character reference or something. And you're here because? Because I'm not doing it. And I wanted you to know he's going to keep trying. He's convinced you're the key to getting his sentence reduced. I'm not writing him anything. Good. He destroyed my life, too. Our son won't talk to either of us. My parents are mortified. I had to sell our house because the legal fees drained everything. She stood up. Just wanted to warn you, he's going to escalate. She left. I watched her walk to the elevator through my office window. 2 weeks after that, I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Rebecca Green. Profile said she worked in financial compliance consulting. Message said she was working on a case study about corporate fraud prevention and wanted to interview me about best practices. Seemed legitimate until I noticed her profile had been created 3 days earlier. 0 connections, no work history details, generic profile photo that reverse image search traced back to a stock photography site. I forwarded it to Benjamin. This is Mark, probably. Block and ignore. Mark kept trying different angles. Sent emails through what appeared to be sympathetic former colleagues. Had someone call my office claiming to be from a legal advocacy nonprofit researching wrongful imprisonment. Even tried a friend request Sophia on Facebook using a fake profile. Every attempt got documented and sent to Benjamin. Month 6 of Mark's sentence, something changed. The attempt stopped. Complete silence for 3 weeks. Then I got a call from Arthur Hayes, the forensic accountant. Thought you should know. Federal prosecutors are investigating additional charges against Thompson. Turns out Riverside wasn't his only victim. What do you mean? He was CFO at 2 other companies before Riverside. Both had unexplained financial irregularities during his tenure. FBI's pulling records now. Could add another 3 to 5 years to his sentence. Huh. Yeah, guy's a serial fraudster. You weren't his first rodeo, just the first one where someone fought back hard enough to expose the whole operation. That explained the sudden silence. Mark had bigger problems than convincing me to help him. Last month, Benjamin forwarded me an email. Mark's lawyer was requesting documents related to my initial termination. Apparently, Mark was trying to sue Riverside for wrongful termination, claiming the company had violated his due process rights when they fired him. Can he do that? I asked. He can file the lawsuit. He'll lose. He was fired for embezzlement that he was later convicted of in federal court. But desperate people do desperate things. What do you need from me? Nothing. Their lawyer already contacted me asking if you'd be willing to testify. I said you'd comply with any subpoena, but wouldn't volunteer. Sound good? Perfect. I haven't heard anything since. Mark's lawsuit will probably get dismissed in preliminary hearings, but the fact that he's burning his remaining money on legal fees trying to go after the company he stole from, that's just poetry. What do you all think? Was his punishment justified, or do you believe in second chances for someone who tried to destroy your life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.